Welcome to our podcast, where we explore fascinating stories and ideas from various fields. In this episode, we discuss Egypt being certified as malaria-free and why it is a historic achievement. Egypt was certified as malaria-free by the World Health Organization, calling the achievement truly historic and the culmination of nearly a century of work to stamp out the disease. Malaria is as old as Egyptian civilization itself, but the disease that plagued pharaohs now belongs to its history and not its future, WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said in a statement. This certification of Egypt as malaria-free is truly historic and a testament to the commitment of the people and government of Egypt to rid themselves of this ancient scourge. Globally, 44 countries and 1 territory have now been certified as malaria-free. Certification is granted by the WHO when a country has proven that the chain of indigenous malaria transmission by Anopheles mosquitoes has been interrupted nationwide for at least the previous 3 consecutive years. A country must also demonstrate the ability to prevent the re-establishment of transmission. Malaria kills more than 6 lakhs people every year, 95% of them in Africa, according to the WHO. There were 249 million recorded malaria cases worldwide in 2022. Spread by mosquitoes, malaria is mostly found in tropical countries. The infection is caused by a parasite. Receiving the malaria elimination certificate today is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a new phase, said Egypt's Health Minister Khaled Abdelgafar. We must now work tirelessly and vigilantly to sustain our achievement through maintaining the highest standards for surveillance, diagnosis, and treatment. The WHO said early efforts to reduce human mosquito contact in Egypt began in the 1920s, when it banned cultivation of rice and agricultural crops near homes. By 1942, cases in Egypt had spiked to more than 3 million as a result of population displacement during World War. The Aswan Dam, built in the 1960s, created new malaria risks as standing water produced breeding grounds for mosquitoes. But by 2001, Egypt had malaria firmly under control, the WHO said. Nigeria accounts for more than a quarter of all malaria deaths annually, ahead of the DR Congo, Uganda, and Mozambique. Thanks for...
Palm trees and sand dunes were flooded across the Sahara Desert on Thursday after rare rainfall hit the region. Drone footage shot in southeastern Morocco captured the extent of the flooding, triggered by the downpours. Morocco's General Directorate of Meteorology said the country experienced a particularly unstable and humid September, which was marked by intense downpour. Some regions experienced heavy rains exceeding 200 millimeters in 48 hours, resulting in flash floods.
And police in Sri Lanka have arrested 3 people on suspicion of plotting an attack against Israeli tourists. Public Security Minister Vijitha Herath said on Thursday that the arrests were made in the eastern coast surfing resort of Arugam. The minister said all 3 suspects arrested by the Terrorism Investigation Division of the police are Sri Lankan nationals. They are being interrogated to ascertain if they had a plan to carry out the attack targeting Israelis. Herath said that adequate measures have been put in place to ensure the safety of all tourists. Earlier, police had announced the arrest of 2 persons and said it came as a result of Indian intelligence information sharing over the security alert in Arugam. They said that the Indian alert had said that the attack could take place between 19 and the 23rd of October. The US Embassy and the British High Commission in Colombo issued statements warning their citizens that they had received credible information targeting the bay and urged tourists to avoid the area until further notice. Meanwhile, the police said that the security net has been extended to the southern coast and the southeastern resort areas. Sri Lanka's Muslim minority groups have condemned the wars in Gaza and Lebanon by holding continuous anti-Israel protests. Several posts have appeared on social media calling for a boycott of Israeli businesses on the east coast.
Jammu and Kashmir in India is facing a sudden surge in terror attacks. The Union Territory has witnessed 4 such attacks in the region in the last 8 days. The attacks come close on the heels of a government formed by an alliance taking over in the territory where terrorists have fought security forces for decades and thousands of people have been killed.
In a tragic escalation of violence, an army convoy was ambushed by terrorists in the general area of Baramulla's Bhuta Pathri on Thursday evening. The Indian Army's Chinar Corps, in a post on X, confirmed that an exchange of fire happened between soldiers and terrorists. The People's Anti-Fascist Front, an offshoot of Jaish-e-Mohammed, has claimed responsibility. According to reports, the attack could have been part of a potential infiltration attempt, heightening concerns of renewed cross-border incursions.
In the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir especially, our efforts are concentrating on breaking the cycle of violence, dismantling the terror ecosystem, empowering the youth and women, facilitating education, promoting sports, reviving the rich historical and cultural legacy of the region. The core of this strategy is to strengthen the relationship amongst the citizens and soldiers while encouraging nationalist and mainstream narratives, particularly among the youth.
The Union Territory is witnessing a spurt in attack on non-locals and security personnel. On Thursday, in another incident, terrorists shot at and injured a labourer in the Batkun Tral area of Pulwama district. The injured labourer was identified as Pritam Singh, a resident of Uttar Pradesh. Earlier on Sunday, a doctor and 6 construction workers were killed when terrorists attacked a tunnel construction site on the Srinagar-Leh National Highway in the Ganderbal district. Former Chief Minister Farooq Abdullah blamed neighbouring Pakistan for the attacks.
We are not going to be part of Pakistan. Then why are they doing this to disrupt our future? They should look towards their country and the issues out there. I appeal to them to stop all this and find a way of friendship. And if they don't do this, there will be problems.
Security forces are carrying out a massive search operation along the line of control in Gulmarg. Officials say the forces are using human and technical intelligence inputs to aid the search operation, which has been launched to trace and neutralize the terrorists behind the attack. Bureau Report, Beyond World is One.
امبارح بالليل تقريبا الساعة 2:30 يعني صار علينا هجوم يعني 6 ضربات وراح من عندنا 7 شهداء يعني من العمال من حرس المصفاية وتقريبا حوالي 17 واحد جريح يعني كلها عمال فقيرة قاعد تشتغل بالمصفاية تترزق وما يعني ما لا هي منشأة عسكرية ولا شيء.
Breaking news, we are just learning of several explosions in Tehran, according to Iranian state media. Of course, Iran has been bracing now for about a month for a retaliatory strike from Israel after Iran launched a barrage of missiles at Israel earlier this month. I want to go straight to Jeremy Diamond. He's in Tel Aviv. And Jeremy, what are you learning right now?
Well, we initially got these reports of explosions in the Iranian capital of Tehran, and now my colleague Alex Marquardt has indeed confirmed, according to an official familiar with the matter, that Israel has indeed begun their retaliatory strikes on Iran. This is, of course, in retaliation for that barrage of ballistic missiles that Iran fired at Israel, some 200 ballistic missiles at the beginning of the month of October. And now, some 3.5 weeks later, it appears that Israel's retaliation is indeed now underway, with multiple explosions reported in the Iranian capital, according to Iran's semi-official Fars news agency. Now, there's a lot that we still don't know at this stage, even as we are starting to get dramatic images of plumes of smoke emerging from Tehran. We don't yet know exactly what the targets were of this Iranian strike. But make no mistake, already just the fact that these explosions were reported in the Iranian capital, this is an indication that Israel is carrying out a more severe retaliation than the one it did for Iran's initial attack against Israel back in April, when it targeted the city of Isfahan, some air defense batteries there. This is now in the heart of the Iranian capital. The question is, what were the targets? Were these simply military targets, or was there something else here? That had been one of the major points of discussion between Israel and the United States, but we can now confirm that those retaliatory strikes by Israel have indeed begun now in Iran.
All right, and crucial, obviously, and as Jeremy's saying, from Iranian state media, they are reporting these explosions in Tehran. We don't know about explosions elsewhere, what those are. And obviously, anyone following this, there had been leaked information from the U.S. government about what it knew about Israel's list of strikes, and perhaps that had delayed this or changed it. It's unclear at this point. Alex Marquardt knows more than anybody. He is obviously confirming that what the Iranian state media, Alex, is reporting about these explosions is indeed part of this anticipated Israeli strike. So what more are you learning from your sources, and the fact that the first explosions that we're hearing about are coming from Tehran and not from a military base, or I suppose it could be one of the base there, but not from a military base elsewhere in the country? What's the significance of that?
Well, yeah, what we're hearing from the Iranians is that this is west of Tehran, so it's unclear what that may be, whether it's a military installation, whether it's air defenses. But as you point out, Aaron, this is long awaited. I mean, the Iranian strike against the Israelis was back on October 1st, and here we are some 24 days later, and I am told by an official that this retaliatory strike by Israel is very much underway. And I think what we can expect to see over the course of the evening will be very different from what we saw back in April. Remember, that was a huge Iranian strike with more than 300 ballistic cruise and missiles and drones. And the Israelis responded in a rather limited fashion against a single air defense battery near Isfahan. This time, they're retaliating for a bigger Iranian strike. On October 1st, we saw some 180 ballistic missiles, so more ballistic missiles than the previous time. They arrive in Israel in just moments. No one in Israel was hurt or killed, but at the same time, there was immediately an expectation that Israel would respond in a very significant way. So what we're going to be watching for in the coming minutes and hours is exactly what these targets are. And from that, we will be able to gauge whether there will be yet another turn, yet another response from Iran in a way that this could further escalate the situation, which, of course, is the biggest fear here in Washington. All
right, absolutely. All right, so we're going to continue to watch this because, as you say, Alex, we're hearing about those explosions. It would be consistent with everything we expect that there will be more in other places. And obviously, there's quite a bit of darkness, literally and figuratively, in terms of our ability to see what's happening there right now. So as you get more, we're going to be coming back to you.
Now let's turn to the war in West Asia. You know that Israel has been at war for over a year now. It started with Gaza, Israel versus Hamas. Then last month, the battlefield expanded. Israel is now inside Lebanon. They have boots on the ground in southern Lebanon. They keep bombing the capital, Beirut, and Hezbollah keeps firing missiles on Israeli cities. But that is not all. As we track this conflict, we often overlook the third active frontier, the one to the south, where Yemen's Houthi rebel group is waging a wider war on global shipping. The Houthis have been attacking ships sailing through the Red Sea. They began their attacks just days after the October 7th attack on Israel. The group claims that this is in support of the Palestinians in Gaza. So they too are fighting against Israel. And now a new report has come out which claims that the Houthis are getting help from Russia. The report says that Russia gave the Houthis satellite data which was used to attack ships. Apparently this information came from 3 sources, but the report does not name them. And this isn't the first time something like this has come up. Last month, there was a different report which said that Russia is keen to sell anti-ship missiles to the Houthis and that Iran was facilitating this deal. Again, this information allegedly came from unnamed sources. So that's a lot of accusations involving all major Western rivals. Before we go any further, let's take a closer look at the Houthi situation. The Houthi rebel group controls vast swathes of Yemen. It is ruling the country de facto. Even though it doesn't have international recognition, the Houthis are backed by Iran. They're part of Iran's so-called axis of resistance. The Houthis have been actively fighting Israel, but through indirect means. Barring the random drone or missile attack, the Houthis don't focus on the Israeli mainland. Instead, they target global shipping. They say that they only target ships with ties to Israel, either Israeli-owned vessels or ships that are transporting goods to Israel. But that has not always been the case. Other vessels have also been caught in the crossfire. Over the last year, the Houthis have attacked more than 100 ships. They've managed to sink 2 of them and hijack 1. This may not be the greatest win ratio, but the Houthis have been extremely successful in their primary goal, wrecking international trade. That's what they've done. Look at these numbers. In October last year, the global the global freight rate for 1 container was about $1,300. But then the Houthis began their attacks. By January, freight rates rose to about $4,000 per container. By July, they hit $5,900. That's where they reached. That's a four-time jump, 4 times higher than last October. Ships have been avoiding the Red Sea for a year now. In August, traffic was 77% lower than it was last October. Ships are now taking longer routes to avoid Houthi attacks, and that drives up costs. These added costs eventually trickle down to ordinary people and make the cost of living crisis worse. So Western nations are furious about this. The US even formed a coalition to tackle the Houthi threat. Along with the UK, they've been bombing Houthi installations. Last week, they even unleashed the B-2 stealth bombers on the Houthis. So even though you don't hear about the Houthis often, they are still a major threat. Now back to the latest report. It says that Russia is aiding the Houthis with satellite data. It's very convenient for the Western narrative. All of their rivals just happen to be working together to the detriment of the whole world. But why would Russia risk its own trade? The report goes directly against what Russian President Vladimir Putin said yesterday.
We are very concerned about what is happening in the region, and no matter what anyone says, Russia is not interested in the conflict getting worse. Strategically, we will not gain anything from this. We will only see additional problems.
So as usual, it's the West's word against Putin's. Who you believe is up to you. But one thing is certain, the Red Sea situation continues to affect all of us.
Well, now we look at the first BRICS summit since Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran and the UAE joined the bloc earlier this year.
Among many things on the agenda is the issue of reducing reliance on the US dollar. Russia has also proposed a unified depository and clearance system for the BRICS states. This is Moscow's latest effort to encourage member countries to expand financial cooperation without the assistance of the West. The bloc also has said that the potential for the way forward is de-dollarization agenda in forex reserves and oil trade. Here's a report for more on this.
The de-dollarization process is real and rising rather swiftly. BRICS Plus controls 42% of global central bank forex reserves. This is likely to contribute to the global de-dollarization process. Gold is the biggest potential alternative to the US dollar for the bloc. Despite active buying by the BRICS Plus group, gold is still only 10% of their central bank reserves, half of the global average. Prospects for global diversification towards BRICS Plus currencies, even a synthetic one, are limited. Therefore, the de-dollarization of global FX reserves will largely stand to benefit the developed market. In other areas, BRICS Plus is increasing its foothold in regional trade, becoming more focused on the trade between member countries. The group is gaining importance as a trade partner for the other emerging markets, especially in the fuel trade. BRICS Plus accounts for 37% of the EM fuel trade, a key area of interest for de-dollarization. BRICS Plus is actively de-dollarizing its financial flows from above-average levels. This is reflected in the Grenbeck's declining shares in their cross-border bank claims. International debt securities and broader external debt at the same time, BRICS Plus has a much smaller global presence in those areas, limiting the impact of its regional de-dollarization for the global role of the greenback. Some experts have suggested central bank digital currency projects such as mBridge could be another channel. Experts at ING Markets think this threat may be overestimated in the short term but underestimated in the long term. BRICS Plus countries have been relatively successful in converting their higher global role into a more active usage of their currencies worldwide. The most notable progress over the few years is seen in the higher share of core BRICS currencies in global payments via SWIFT. Still, the dollar seems to be retaining its global dominance despite America's shifting role in the global economy and markets. Nevertheless, BRICS Plus has the potential to challenge some DM currencies in future.
This year's BRICS summit was about many things, including alternative payments mechanism. Now, this is led by Russia. Russia was removed from the SWIFT payments mechanism after the Ukraine war in 2022. Now, essentially, what has been happening is that not only in the BRICS grouping, but outside, the focus is on trading in national currencies. Indian Prime Minister, during his address, mentioned about this and also mentioned about the UPI, which he said has been adopted by the UAE. There are other countries as well, but on the table is BRICS Pay, BRICS Bridge and other such initiatives, and both have been led by China and Russia. In fact, the Russian President Vladimir Putin recently said that its trade with China is almost 97% in national currencies, that is yuan and in ruble. With India also, trading has been focused on national currencies, and it looks like that this will be the mantra of the BRICS grouping, not only the de-dollarization bit, which could take some time, but also on trading in national currencies and having their own payments mechanism, which is non-Western. Sudhan Sibal for WION in Kazan, Russia.
And from London, we are now joined by Jack Roush, Research Associate at the United Against Nuclear Iran. Welcome to the broadcast, Jack. As Israel readies itself to retaliate against Iran, how much pressure is the Biden administration under to avoid any escalation, given that the US polls are less than 2 weeks away?
Thank you for having me. I think that the Biden administration sees great political risk in escalation between Israel and Iran at this point, because any action by Israel or reaction by Iran has the potential to impact the price of petroleum on the international market, which could harm both the American consumer and create panic among U.S. financial markets. This would, as I mentioned, bring great risk for the Biden administration and their preferred candidate, Kamala Harris. And there's also the pressure that would come for the United States to potentially involve itself in Israeli operations, which could create the impression that the Biden administration is unable to effectively respond and also bring issues for the election of Kamala Harris.
And how do you think Iran could retaliate against any Israeli attack, if at all?
So we've seen a few things mentioned by military and IRGC leadership in Iran. Just yesterday, the commander of the IRGC, Hossein Salami, mentioned that the IRGC could consider a ground operation against Israel. This to me seems unlikely. The most likely scenario would likely be a similar attack to what we saw in October, perhaps using additional missile platforms and also drone technology. I've also seen mentioned that Iran could launch an attack involving up to 1,000 missiles, though to me this seems unlikely given the size of the Iranian missile stockpile. One other thing that's worth considering is that we've seen in recent weeks increasing mention of Iran potentially amending its nuclear doctrine towards open weaponization. This would be a drastic escalation and would be a direct threat against further Israeli action.
Let's also talk about the conflict in Lebanon. How do you view the Israeli operations in Lebanon, where its troops are facing deadly fire from the Hezbollah as Israeli jets continue to pound Beirut?
So we have seen small arms exchanges between IDF soldiers and Hezbollah fighters. However, we've also seen the rate of Hezbollah attacks against Israel slow. These have happened on a near daily basis since October 7th, involving numerous civilian and military casualties. The pace of those attacks from Hezbollah has slowed. We've also seen Hezbollah leadership face collapse following Israeli operations. And for that reason, senior IDF commanders have mentioned the possibility of slowing operations in Lebanon or halting them entirely. This could also be in conjunction with Netanyahu's increasing willingness to reach some kind of negotiated settlement with Hamas. And operations will likely continue so that this can be kept on the table should negotiations go forward.
Thank you so much, Jack Roush, for joining us on the broadcast today.
Thank you for having me.